Spirit 92.9 welcomes you to The Lunch Break with your friends Josh, Jess, and Rachel. Join us as we chat about life, food, faith, and everything in between.
Hey, it's the Lunch Break podcast. We're Josh, Jess, and Rachel. Hard to believe we are already on season 2, episode 3.
Whoa!
And this whole thing kind of came about. We figured out we have some of the best conversations around the lunch table. So we thought we'd make a podcast out of that. And so today we're going to be talking about, this kind of a big subject. It's a little bit heavy. Shoulda, woulda, coulda. Kind of talking about that idea of regrets and things that, we look back on and we might wish we would have done or wish we'd gone down a different path, but also where God is in all of that. And so we're going to have a really good conversation today. But first, we must talk about what we brought in our lunchbox. Because how can we have the Lunch Break podcast without talking about what we brought for lunch?
Okay, who wants to go first?
Well, I'm just going to be honest. I forgot my lunch at home.
That's
no.
okay.
I did actually make chicken noodle soup with dumplings.
Ooh.
But it's at home. And I'm so sad because home's too far away to go back and get it right now. So I'm just going to have to eat it for dinner. But
It sounds good.
We're
Yes,
definitely on
soup
the soup
season.
Yes, I'm on the soup season train too because I made taco soup.
Oh.
And it's not fancy, Josh. I'm gonna say it because it's so easy. It's literally open a can, dump it in, that type of soup, which are the best type
Very
of soup.
Midwestern
That
of
is
you.
Yes.
my kind of meal right
Yeah.
there.
So, taco soup was mine. Josh, you?
So I made a recipe from a friend. I actually can't remember what it's called at the moment, but I made a marinade for chicken that had lime and cilantro and honey and some other stuff in it. And I soaked the chicken in that for about an hour. And then I just pan-fried the chicken and serve it over cilantro lime rice.
Do you have extras?
Yeah, that sounds amazing.
I have I made way too much rice. I realized that I do not know much about making rice because I hardly ever make it, and I made way too much.
Oh, it's kind of like pasta. No matter what you do, you have enough to feed an army.
Yeah.
That's true.
Don't try to.
So if you want to find the recipes, they are on our website, spirit929.com, in the recipe box. So check it out. So let's just dive right into Shoulda, Woulda, Coulda, which Jess actually came up with that name.
It's a catchy title.
Yeah, and it's all about regrets and how do we navigate when we have regrets in life, but we still are trusting what God's plan is for our life.
Yeah, because it's hard not to think back to like the paths that you could have taken versus the paths that God took you on and what that outcome has been. We idealize where we might be if we had gone a different direction or something like that, or if something hadn't happened in our lives. And so we can often live a life kind of stuck in those, what ifs, right?
Yeah.
And so maybe that's something you find yourself kind of stuck in that right now. Like, what if this would have or wouldn't have happened? Or what if I would have done this or not done that? And so we just want to talk about that and talk about how we can kind of move out of that space.
Yeah. So who wants to start with this conversation? Does anyone have some regrets they want to share?
Well, I can
Is this
start.
therapy or a podcast?
A little bit of both. A little bit of both. I just think, so for me, I'm actually wearing my Green Bay Packers jersey today, which kind of segues well into something that I have struggled with, a regret that I did not play sports when I was in high school, which, if you're not a sports fan, it might not be a big deal to you. But me growing up, I was a huge sports fan. I loved playing football and basketball. I grew up in Northwest Wisconsin and I was homeschooled. And at that time, homeschoolers were not allowed to play in the sports leagues with the public schoolers. And so that was always something that it was really tough for me in high school because I would go and play basketball at the community center and play against these other guys. And I'd have people be like, hey, you should join our high school team. And I'd kind of get my hopes up and it never happened. And so that was something that was really hard for me then. And even to this day, all these years later, there are times I still look back and I'm like, man, I wish I would have had that opportunity. I think it would have been a lot of fun. I think I would have learned a lot of good life lessons. So I think that's one. And, obviously not a super serious one, but still something that has caused me some pain and some regret. And yet I also think about, since we're talking about the redeeming value in all of this, I don't know where I would be had I taken that path. Like, I might be in a completely different place. I might not be sitting in this room recording this podcast right now. So obviously God had plans. He led me on the path that I'm on. But even so, that is one that sometimes gets me.
Did you always want to be like a football star when you grew up?
I think when I was a
star?
kid, yeah. And, I know I wouldn't have gone that far. But I'm like, well, I maybe could have played college sports. I don't know what I could have done with it. But yeah, it's one of those things where you start imagining the opportunities, but I don't know what really would have happened. I might have blown out my ACL too, and who knows what could have happened.
Yeah.
Do you have anything you wish you would have done when you were that age? Like, since we're going back there.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I don't know necessarily in like high school. This is something in college. So I spent a semester in New York City, my senior year of college, and I was studying musical theater when I was there. And I had this absolutely wonderful teacher. And she was just one of those teachers that just truly believes in you, like very fervently. And before the semester ended, she had asked me, she was like, okay, so next semester you're going to graduate. So what's going to happen? Like, what are you going to do? And I was like, oh, I don't know. I'm still figuring things out, probably going to do radio. And, that's my passion. And she said, well, what about theater? And I was like, I don't know, maybe doing some stuff on the side. And she said, so you're not going to stay in New York? And I said, no, I don't think so. And she said, well, Broadway's loss. And I will never forget that conversation. Yeah, huge compliment. But I will never forget that conversation for the rest of my life, because it's just like, what if I would have stayed? But then, looking at what actually happened, if I would have stayed, I would have gone through COVID in New York City. And that would have been an entirely different thing. And I look back on that and say, I was at a place in my life, I was not ready to live in New York City, right, fresh out of college. I was not mentally healthy enough for that yet. That was just not something that I should have done at that age. And I'm really glad that I am where I am now, because like Josh said, I wouldn't be at this table. I wouldn't be here in Minnesota if I hadn't followed God's path for me.
Isn't that something? I think that, we all kind of have stories like that. Like if we would have followed different directions, or, I always wanted to be like a writer. That was kind of my passion. I wanted to work for a newspaper. Kind of glad I didn't do that now. Who would have known how the world was going to change? And I even just think back, this is a little deeper, but what if, when I was a young teenage girl, if I would have felt like I had more value and made some different decisions when it came to relationships and things like that, my life would look totally, totally different. I had my oldest child when I was young. I was in a relationship that ended up not being healthy for many years and ended. And I'm just like, what would have happened if I, had loved myself more and thought I was worth more? Where would my life be right now? What would I be doing? Then I look back at that and I say, well, because of that, and because I was searching then for love and acceptance outside of those things in my life, because I didn't feel like I had them in my marriage or whatever, I looked to God for that. And thank God that I found him in that and started following him, and then, tried a few different careers. And then he was like, I want you here. And I was like, radio? What? That's not even on my radar, pun intended. It's like, I don't like my voice. What am I going to do in radio? What am I going to do? But he had a whole plan laid out, right? And if I wouldn't have needed him so badly because I felt so unloved, then I wouldn't have sought him and ended up here. So the whole story, right? Like God just uses all of these what ifs in our lives, or even regrets, and he uses them to bring us to where he wants us to be. One way or another, he's going to get us where he wants us to be. And sometimes we might not take the clear, easy path to get there, but he'll get us there.
It's so true. Yeah. I think about there are so many different times where I have had that what if question go through my mind. And it can even be just small decisions. It can be relationship choices, things like that. that question can circle around in our minds over and over again.
Yeah.
And we have to take that step of saying, I would not be where I am right now unless I made that decision, unless God led me to where I am now. And it's a hard thing to trust that his plan is the best plan. Our plan is always going to be flawed, and there's always going to be some like broken things that will happen in that plan. But when we choose to follow what God has destined for us, there are going to be good results at the end of the road.
What do you guys think about, though? Are there times when we do maybe grieve what could have been?
Yeah.
A little bit. Like, I think that's an important point, too, that it's okay to feel those feelings sometimes. It's just we can't stay there.
Yeah.
But I saw this quote from John Piper, who was a pastor in the Twin Cities for many years. And he said, occasionally weep deeply over the life that you hoped would be, grieve the losses, feel the pain, then wash your face, trust God, and embrace the life that he's given you. And that's pretty powerful because, yeah, it still allows you to feel those feelings because there is a sense of loss and grief sometimes when there's something that we were planning or hoping for or a choice we didn't make that we wish we would have. There can be a sense of grief for sure. And so mourning that, giving yourself space to feel those feelings, but then moving on and being like, all right, God, what do you have for me now? Because he always, always has good things to come for us.
Yeah. And even when we think like, well, if only, back then I would have made this choice, my whole life would be better, right? I'd be happy now. And I don't know if you guys ever do that to yourselves. I do that to myself sometimes. That keeps us in such a place of, or a mindset of lack.
Yeah.
Like I am not living my best life because of this decision that I made. And why do we think that we are so much more powerful than God, that our choices can just totally thwart his plan for our life? You know what I mean? Again, like I said, he knows where he wants us to be. And one way or another, he's going to get us there. So even if we took a wrong turn somewhere at one point in our life, he got us back on the path that he wanted us on in another way. So I think we give ourselves too much power in that way.
Yeah, we give ourselves or other people too much power in that.
Yeah.
There's just, I think you even look in the Bible and there's so many stories of people who, and their lives did not go according to the plan that they thought. You know, I think about the story of Joseph, and he had, if you go read that in the book of Genesis, he had so many bad things happen to him. Most of them weren't his choices. Most of them were other people's choices.
Yeah.
But it had to be so hard. And yet kind of the crux of that story is that he ended up saving his family and preserving God's plan. And he was even one of his brothers was in the lineage of Jesus. And so it's just incredible to think about that and that idea of sometimes what we intended for evil, God intended for good. What people intended for evil, God intended for good. And so he uses those circumstances to bring us exactly to where he wants us. And we can't mess up his plan. That's comforting, right? We cannot mess up his plan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It makes me think of when we're going through those times in life that we didn't expect to happen. Like, God, why am I dealing with this right now? Why is this happening in my life? And then you move forward and you keep going and you look back on those times. Those are the times that helped you grow. Those are the times where your faith grew. Those are the times where you truly leaned on God for his strength and your relationship became completely different with him. And while we go through those twists and turns and these unexpected things that happen, those are the times where change and growth happen, which make you the person that you become today.
Yeah, that's so true. Even the hard things, and when someone else's decisions kind of affect your path and you're thinking, well, now what? My whole life is just messed up. Well, no, we have an opportunity there. We can sit in that valley. There's that saying like, don't set up camp in the valley. God is there with you, and he's going to help walk you through it and get you out of it. If you just sit down and stay there, well, yeah, you're kind of stuck and you're not going to be living out God's plan for your life. But if, like Josh said with that quote, if you grieve those things and you feel those things and you let Jesus heal, we have a saying in our family, feel it and then let Jesus heal it,
That's
so it's
good.
like,
I love
yeah.
that.
And then you keep moving forward because the valley doesn't last forever and God brings you out on the other side. And there's so much you learn in those seasons of hardship and pain that when you come out of that valley, God is going to use those things in your life. In my life, with what I've been through with my marriage and betrayal and all those things, God gave me so many tools and insights and stuff in my healing process that now I'm able to help other people who are walking through that same valley and take their hand and help walk with them through it. And so we can let him use those situations, those regrets, those what ifs in our life to help other people, kids, the next generation, whatever it is. It's just all how we react to it, you know?
Yeah. It does make me feel very comforted at this table. I'm not the only one that deals with having regrets, and I'm not the only one that thinks about this stuff, because I think when we do share these stories, it reminds us, number one, we're human, and it reminds us each one of us has gone through something similar, and we are way more alike than we think.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
Well, should we do questions from the lunchbox?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll
Okay.
read them today.
By the way, this whole questions from the lunchbox thing, I have a very special lunchbox that looks like a boombox. It
On
is
display.
the boombox lunchbox. And
Right
so
now.
we draw topic-related questions from that lunchbox every
right.
time and talk about them.
Okay.
So Rachel's drawing
go.
the first one.
First one.
More than lunch in our lunchbox.
Okay. How do you live life with no what ifs?
First
there
of
a
all,
song about
yeah,
that?
I was gonna say. First of all, that reminds me of
the only day I've got.
Matthew West song.
Like there's no what ifs. Okay, sorry.
I know that's a tough one though, because honestly, I have not lived a life that has no what ifs.
Real.
So how do you? I don't know. It seems a little bit, at least for me, maybe a little idealistic to live a life with no what ifs, but maybe with fewer what ifs, fewer regrets. I don't know. I think one of the most important things is thinking about what's important long term. What do I care about? What do I want my legacy to be? What do I want my life to look like? What do I want to be remembered for? Thinking about those long-term things, because so often I kind of get stuck on the short-term things, and I think short-term thinking can lead to those what-ifs and regrets.
Yeah, that's good. I think too, for me, a lot of maybe my regrets or what ifs are things that I made decisions based on fear. And so I've learned from that, right? After doing that a number of times, opportunities that I may have missed because I was afraid or didn't think I was ready or good enough or different things like that. And so learning to really approach everything with a lot of prayer and asking God to be clear and show his will in the situation. And then waiting until I feel the peace of God in that decision. And if I don't feel the peace of God in my decision, then I need to rethink it and pray some more. But just slowing down and trusting him to show me what he wants me to do instead of making that decision out of my own emotions, which is really hard not to do.
Yeah. I think this question is so hard. I'm the one that asked it. Why did I do that?
Are you having regrets about asking that question?
But I'm agreeing with you, Jess. So much of the decisions that I have made in my life have been out of fear of I don't want to do that because I'm not this enough, or I'm not ready, or I'm whatever. And that is such a horrible thing when you just let your anxiety decide for you. And it's, if you haven't seen Inside Out 2, I'm thinking of that.
Just watched it.
But there is this
So
scene where anxiety, the character, is trying to solve everything, but she's just frozen solid because she's moving so fast. And she's trying to take care of everything. And that's what it feels like when you let anxiety take control of your brain. You are literally immobile. You can't move anymore. You feel paralyzed, all of that. And so there have been moments where I didn't do something because I let anxiety take control. And it's in those moments, this comes from growth, but it's in those moments where I have to rely that God has a plan and that there is something way better than that current moment that I'm in that's in front of me. And that takes strength. It takes courage. It takes trust. And oh my goodness, for me, it has taken so much mental growth to be able to trust in God. And so how do you live a life with no what ifs? You trust that God has a plan. Every day when you wake up, You rely on him. Every day when you wake up, you try to grow closer to him. And that's going to ebb and flow every single day. Some days you're going to be on fire. Some days, well, you're not. But it's a journey. It's called a journey for a reason. It has bends and twists. But as long as you trust in him, good things are going to happen.
Yeah, Rachel, to that point, in a weird way, maybe the regrets and the what ifs are kind of a blessing. Because if we went through life with no regrets and no what ifs, as good as that sounds in an ideal world, why would we have to trust God then?
Ooh, yeah.
Why would we have to trust God if my plan is going perfectly and I always, explored every avenue that I wondered about? I wouldn't really have to trust him. So in a strange way, as God so often does, he takes something that we think of as bad and he turns it for good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think about that too. He's redirected my path so many times. And it was hard at the moment, but looking back on it now, you're like, oh, I'm so grateful that he did because he knew something I didn't know or he had something even better than I was even thinking about at the time. And so we got to trust him when he does that he is doing it for a purpose.
Should we do another question?
Yep.
Question number 2.
Okay. All right. Ooh,
I get nervous.
I know. This is a hard one. How do you find comfort when you do find yourself looking back?
Yeah, I asked that one. And I think it's a lot of what we've already been talking about.
Yeah.
Just trusting that God has a plan and that we cannot mess it up. And there's a quote from Lisa Bevere that comes to mind. And she says, if you think you've blown God's plan for your life, rest in this. You are not that powerful.
Yes.
Right? So,
Yeah.
Jess, I know you mentioned that earlier, too, that we're not powerful enough to blow God's plan. We think we are. We think that our decisions hold so much weight. And I'm not saying that our decisions aren't important or that they don't matter. But ultimately, God is the one that has charted the course for our life. And there's comfort in that we can't mess it up. And so in those moments when we are kind of meandering through those what ifs and regrets, I think that is the comfort that God's plan is good and that he has our good in mind and his glory.
Mm-hmm.
I
don't really have anything else to add to that. That was great. Okay, period. Next question. Okay. Ooh. This is fun. Okay. What did you want to do when you grew up versus what are you doing now and how do you see God's hand in it?
Oh, boy. I think I kind of touched on that when I said I wanted to be a writer. Well, I mean, it depends, right? When I was real little, I think I wanted to be a Barbie. And then...
Doesn't your daughter want to be a princess now?
Yes.
Kind of runs in the family.
Cute.
Oh, yeah. She decided she's going to work at Disney and be a part-time princess. I think that was the latest. So, yeah. But, you dream big when you're a kid, and then you start to really think about it. And it's like, well, what are my passions and giftings? And I just really loved writing in high school. And so I wanted to either be a newspaper writer, like I already mentioned, or be like a travel blogger. I mean, come on. Hi, you get to go travel all over the world. And then I had kids, and reality set in, and I didn't do any of those things. And I floundered a little bit. Like I was a preschool teacher for a little bit. I managed a bagel shop here in town for a little bit. I worked at the hospital as a PCA. And I never felt like, yes, this is where I'm meant to be. Like, this is great. There was something missing. And then God opened the door to the radio station here. I took part in a contest, and I got to know the people that were here at the time. And they were like, hey, this other person's leaving, and we think you would be great for, doing a lot of the promotion stuff. And I was like, I don't even know what that means, but okay. There was just like this peace, right? And so I just followed God through that open door, never understanding or knowing that it would lead to doing radio, being on the radio, doing the programming. It was not my plan at all. It was completely God's plan. And so it was just a matter of saying yes to him. And it's kind of similar to writing. It's just talking out the words instead of writing them, right? And there's not much travel involved as far as exotic places and any of that, but that's okay. I can live without that. So.
Yeah. When I was little, I wanted to be a veterinarian so bad.
Really?
Yes. But then as I got older, realized that also includes hurting the animals, and I can't do that. I cannot do that ever. And I even thought about being a zoologist for a little bit, but it just never, lots of school that you have to do that. So my parents are in Christian radio and have been for a very long time. And so I had been around that world for literally all of my life. And I was resisted so much of, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do what my parents do. No, I don't want to do this. But as I started to be around them more and be around the environment, I really realized that I love the community that Christian radio brings, and I genuinely love it. And when I went to college, I decided to study that and study theater, and of course I love both. But I realized that radio is kind of the mix of the two, of there is like a little bit of a theatrical level that can come with radio sometimes.
Absolutely.
And so it just kind of became the perfect mesh of both. That's not to say that I don't want to do theater in the future, wink, wink. But I love this job, and I love being able to spread the love of Jesus through radio. And sorry, I'm not a veterinarian, but
yeah,
I'm okay with it.
But God has given you such unique gifts in, the acting ability and your character and personality and stuff like that. I can see him using you definitely in both ways, the radio and the theater thing. We have a great local theater here in central Minnesota, so
Maybe one day.
hopefully
Maybe one
soon.
day.
Josh?
Well, I kind of touched on this already with the whole sports thing, but yeah, I wanted to be a professional athlete. When I was a kid, I wanted to be a professional athlete when I grew up. That obviously did not happen. I still love playing sports and get to do it quite a bit. But it's just interesting looking back over my childhood and, yeah, kind of God's hand in directing me here. I remember back in the day, my two older brothers and I, we had bunk beds in our bedroom. We all were in one bedroom because I had a huge family. And we would do a fake radio show before bed.
That's so cute.
we made little pretend microphones out of like paper towel tubes, and so we had our microphones, and we were WSCJ. That was Steve, Caleb, Josh.
Oh my God.
WSCJ, and our slogan was, we talk about issues that matter to you but don't matter to us.
Okay.
We had some sarcastic humor even at that age. But it is funny because like I don't think I really imagined myself as being on the radio when I was a kid, and yet we did that. And I would do all kinds of like interpretive reading and did drama and stuff in middle school and high school. And so you can kind of just see how God was developing my skill set for what I ended up doing now. And he let me, even though this wasn't something that was like a clear, like, oh, I see God's hand and he's pointing towards Spirit 92.9. He did bring me here, and like we talked about, he charted the course and the path that led me to where I am right now in central Minnesota.
We will not be using that tagline here at Spirit, where we talk about what matters to you, but not to us.
I think, what did you use for microphones again?
Oh
I feel like we need to bring that back.
It was paper towel tubes, and I think we'd put like a little paper towel over the top as kind of like the
Need a
mic
filter.
cover.
Yeah.
Our pop filter.
Let's bring it back.
You were thinking about things you didn't even know to think about back then. I love it.
All right. One more?
Sure.
One more. Yeah,
Okay.
let's do it.
Is there an opportunity that was placed in front of you that you regret not taking? Which I touched on this a little bit with my experience with New York City and maybe doing Broadway and all of that. But oh my goodness, I never realized how much work that takes.
Yeah.
And like mental stability, the one thing that they told us all the time when I was studying in New York is this is a business of rejection. And that terrified me because at that point in my life, my own sense of value, to be honest, was so low. There was no way I would have been able to do that. And so in hindsight, looking back, thank you, Jesus, for not letting me stay in New York, because I feel like it would have destroyed me. I feel like I would have been at the lowest point in my life if I would have stayed. And now at this place I'm at now, I've gone through so much personal growth, and I know that my value is in Christ. I know my identity is in Christ. It's not in anything else. And that has been through a huge journey of graduating college, moving to Florida, and then moving here. So did I think that was how it was going to happen? No. But I will say that there is a small part of me that still, at this point, this healthy point in life right now, kind of regrets not being there. Just a little bit.
Yeah. Wondering what would have happened, right? Right? How that all would have played out.
Jess, how about you?
I know. I'm trying to think like...
Yeah, it's kind of a hard question.
Well, the truth is, like, there have been opportunities given to me or presented to me to take jobs in other parts of the country. But I don't know that I regret not taking them. And honestly, there are some that I didn't take out of fear. But when I look back now, it's like, I don't know. There was a reason I didn't feel peace about it. So I'm assuming that it was God, showing me that right now he wants me to be here and to stay put. And so I don't know that I regret it. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened, if I lived near the beach, per se. I don't know. Would that have made me happier? I don't know. No guarantees, right? Although I love the beach. But yeah, I guess I'm just in such a place of peace with it now that I don't feel regret so much as just curiosity. But,
Yeah. That's an interesting point, too.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's okay to, just be curious about what would have happened without regrets. And I can think of one kind of like that, too, which, again, going back to the sports thing. But I remember, I think he was one of the coaches when I went to college asking if I'd ever considered, like, playing football. And so I kind of thought about that, tossed that idea around a little bit and didn't end up doing it. I mean, I hadn't played in high school or anything, so it would have been kind of tough to just start that up. But I guess I wonder once in a while, what would that have been like to play football? But I don't know that I necessarily regret it either.
Yeah. I just think that God gives us such a peace when he wants us to do something. And if we do something without that peace, maybe it's because that's not the path that he has for us. And again, just to close this out, he's going to bring us back to where he wants us. He might have to bring us, dragging us along the path because we don't want to do it his way. But that sounds terrible. But either way, he's going to get us where he wants us to be. And sometimes there will be detours because we make wrong choices, but we can't mess up his plan for our life. That is kind of the thought of this whole conversation that just keeps coming back to me and brings so much peace, is that we can't mess up his plan.
Amen.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, thank you for joining us for the Lunch Break podcast. If you would like to watch our past episodes, they're on our Spirit 92.9 YouTube channel. You can also listen on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Amazon Music.
And you'll regret it if you don't.
Oh,
See, haha, theme of the episode. Okay.
speaking of regrets.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
But you can tune into past episodes on there. And you can also find the recipes that we mentioned on our website, spirit929.com, in the recipe box. And thank you so much for listening and watching. And we will be back with you next time. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.